We are monitoring breaking news in Iran. For more, we're going to be joined now by NBC News, Pentagon, and National Security correspondent Courtney Kube. Courtney, what do we have?
So, Lawrence, there has been some breaking news all this evening that we've been trying to get more detail on. Here's what we know so far. According to Iran's semi-official state media, that's Fars, they are saying that there have been a series of explosions in Iran, in a city called Isfahan. Now, why a lot of our viewers may have heard of that city is because it's where some of Iran's critical nuclear infrastructure exists. But so far, it seems that these explosions are not specifically in Isfahan, where the nuclear facility is, but are nearby. Now, the U.S. officials are not saying anything about this. Neither are Israeli officials. But of course, this all comes when there has been this back and forth between Iran and Israel and threats from both sides. Now, of course, on April 1st, the Israeli military struck a site in Damascus, which was later determined to be some sort of a consular site, killing a number of senior Iranian officials, including a senior general in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Of course, we know, Lawrence, that last weekend, Iran retaliated with pretty great force, about 300 projectiles, missiles, and drones, most of which were shot down. But Israel again vowed to respond. Now, among the possible response options that we have been hearing about this week that Israel briefed the U.S. on ahead of the strikes last weekend was the possibility of some sort of a response inside Iran, but also the possibility of strikes against proxy forces and against Iranian facilities outside of Iran. There are also some reports tonight of explosions in Syria and in Iraq. But I really have to stress at this point, we do not have any confirmation who was behind any of these explosions, these possible strikes, other than to say everyone has really been waiting on edge to see if Israel would respond to this massive volley of strikes that they took against Israel, that Iran took against Israel on Saturday, Lawrence.
And Courtney, this is ahead of where our information is now, but a few days from now, or whatever amount of time it takes, when would we have, or could we have, an accurate assessment, damage assessment of what might have actually occurred tonight?
So we're already seeing, frankly, some social media video of explosions over the skies in Isfahan. There's some things that are starting to come out from both Iraq and Syria. So we may get a better sense of that in the next day or so. It's about daylight in all three locations right now, Friday morning. So we may get a sense of that. The real question, though, is will we get any attribution to this? Now, keep in mind, there's a widespread knowledge that Israel has taken a number of strikes inside Syria in recent years, specifically usually going after Lebanese Hezbollah, going after shipments of component parts, advanced missile parts that Iran ships to Hezbollah in Syria. And they very rarely, if ever, acknowledge any of those strikes. It would not surprise me if we don't have any statement of attribution for who is behind these, except for the fact that Israel's been vowing to respond here. So, again, I have to say, we still don't know who or what caused these explosions in these three locations. We've been working on this feverishly for a matter of hours now, Lawrence, and will continue. But at this point, again, the U.S. and the Israelis are not saying anything. And even Iran, while acknowledging there have been explosions, is not saying who or what was behind them.
Courtney Kube, Pentagon correspondent, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. We're going to come back to you as this story develops. And joining us now is Ben Rhodes, who served as Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama. He's an MSNBC political analyst. Ben, on the issue of attribution, will the United States issue a statement of having nothing to do with it, possibly?
Yeah, that's quite possible. And in fact, Lawrence, in the past, even when Israel has taken strikes against Iranian targets in third countries, in places like Lebanon and Syria, sometimes the United States does put out a statement to clarify that it itself was not involved. That said, I mean, it's not a mystery, if you have this kind of attack, particularly if it's in Isfahan and if it's against Iranian proxies in places like Iraq and Syria. I don't think there's going to be a ton of mystery around it. I think what we can say with assurance is that the United States itself did not participate in that kind of military activity.
What do you expect in terms of the unfolding of this information at this hour? When might we hear something from more clear or something official from the Pentagon?
Well, I think that, it's likely that assuming Israel carried out these strikes, they would notify the United States probably shortly beforehand. If they did carry out strikes inside of Iran at a place like Isfahan, that obviously would go against what Joe Biden had counseled them, which is to not directly retaliate against Iranian territory. I think the U.S. has a greater degree of tolerance and understanding of Israeli strikes against Iranian proxies across the region. But even in the event in which the Israeli government knows that the Biden administration might not support their action, they would still notify the United States. I think that it's necessary, though, to wait and see whether this is the conclusion of a military action. Is this a series of kind of one-off strikes in Iraq and Syria and Iran, or is it the beginning of several strikes that could take place in different places? I think the U.S., before it comments in any formal way, would obviously want to know and be certain that this latest round of escalation has concluded. So, I'd expect that to happen kind of over our night. But again, I think the U.S. will also take some lead from whether or not Israel is publicly commenting, publicly taking responsibility for these strikes. Given how much Israel said that it was going to respond, even though it's sometimes been reluctant to claim responsibility for certain military actions, given how far they've been out there saying they're going to respond, I have to assume we get some confirmation from the Israeli side, too, in the coming hours.
Take us inside the White House on a night like this. They've had this information, Courtney indicates, for a number of hours now. You've been there. You've been in the White House where this kind of information comes across at, say, 8 p.m., and you end up spending the rest of the night there. What's happening in the offices that you used to be in at this hour in this situation?
Well, I think what you'd be doing is if you find out that something like this is happening, that's a significant potential escalation in the Middle East, you're bringing everybody together in the White House Situation Room and by secure video conference to the Pentagon and the State Department and the intelligence community. Number one, you're trying to ascertain what happened. If Israel did take military action, what were their targets? What was their success in hitting those targets? Number two, you're taking extra precautions to secure U.S. personnel and military facilities across the region and diplomatic facilities, by the way, Lawrence. We have vulnerable facilities to potential Iranian reprisal in places like Iraq. And so part of, job one of any administration is to make sure that we're ramping up the defenses of our personnel if we see escalation in the region. Then I think you're undertaking a diplomatic strategy, reaching out to Israel to get an understanding, okay, if you did do this, is this it, or is this the beginning of further escalation? Reaching out to other countries in the region, the Arab states, what are they hearing? Trying to send messages to the Iranians. Don't respond. We're trying to de-escalate. We're trying to avoid this becoming a regional war. And so those are your main priorities, understanding what's happening, protecting U.S. personnel and facilities in the region, and trying to avert an escalation that clearly the Biden administration doesn't want.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.